Hi, I'm Robin, and I'm happy to welcome you to Creative Painter Kit Club. These artist quality kits guide anyone, even a beginning painter, to create beautiful paintings in the comfort of their own home. In this video, I'm going to talk about the gifts you received when you joined Creative Painter Kit Club. You'll use these free gifts to create all of your paintings. I'll also walk you through some of the basic steps you'll do for every kit, such as stretching your paper, transferring the outline drawing onto the watercolor paper or canvas, and mixing colors. First is the Painting Basics Guide. The material in the guide is essential for successfully painting the projects in each kit. You'll find explanations of basic painting terms, basic painting techniques, using masking fluid, paintbrush use and care, stretching your paper, and transferring the outline drawing, and more. Read this guide thoroughly before beginning and also review it every time you paint. This is the 8-well slanted palette. Your palette is white so you can clearly see colors of paints and paint mixes. The 8 round wells hold pure paint straight from the tube. They keep the pure colors separate while allowing you to scoop up paint with your brush. The mixing wells are larger to allow extra room for mixing colors and diluting with water. They are slanted toward you so you can see the mixes better. When mixing colors, look at the size of the area you'll be painting with that color. The more you paint, the easier it will be to gauge the amount of paint you need. For example, when I painted this painting, I knew I was going to need a lot of green, so I mixed quite a bit. The graphite transfer paper is used to transfer the vellum drawing in your kit onto your watercolor paper or canvas. 2 sheets are included in your free gifts premium, and additional sheets will be sent to you every 4 to 5 kits. I'll show you how to use the graphite paper to transfer the outline drawing later in this video. Your free gifts premium includes 10 paintbrushes. It's important to use the appropriate brush to achieve the desired results. You have 4 flat brushes. The larger ones will be used to cover larger areas on paintings, such as the sky in this painting. The smaller flat brushes are used to create sharp edges or lines and add texture, such as painting the poppies and grasses in this painting. Round brushes have rounded bristles. They're good for detail and texture. This painting was painted using only the size 6 and size 4 round brushes. The smallest round brush, size 0, is also called a liner brush. It's good for very small areas or fine details. In this painting, the liner brush was used to paint the very fine lines of the wood grain on the door. To load the brush, roll it in the paint to keep the point sharp. With the liner brush, just barely touch the tip to the paper for a fine line. Think of the brush as a sharp pencil. If you put pressure on it, the point will break. Add a little more pressure for a thicker line. You may find it helpful to rest your pinky on the canvas to give you more control. Just make sure the area is dry. Pull toward yourself, and be sure to hold the brush upright, almost perpendicular to the paper. You can also use your other hand as support if that works better for you. Don't look at the tip of the brush, but look ahead of the brush and where you want it to go. To achieve very fine lines, it helps to dilute the paint to the consistency of ink. Practice on extra watercolor paper or scrap paper until the lines are the thickness you want. This is a fan brush. It is used to add texture, often for grass or water. It could be used to paint the bushes and background foliage in this painting. This is a filbert brush. The stiff bristles of this brush are used to stipple texture as seen on the foliage and rocks in this painting. As I mentioned earlier, the graphite transfer paper is used to transfer the vellum outline drawing in your kit onto your watercolor paper or canvas. This is my favorite part of Creative Painter kits. The artist who created each painting also created a simple outline drawing for you to transfer. This takes the hardest part of painting out of the process. You don't have to draw a thing. I've already mounted my watercolor paper on a board, and I'll explain how to do that later in this video. First, you'll unfold the graphite paper and lay the shiny side down on your watercolor paper or canvas. Tape one edge only so that you'll be able to lift it to see how you're doing on your tracing. Next, tape the vellum sheet with the outline drawing on top. And be sure to tape only one side of it also. Begin tracing at the upper left-hand side of your drawing and move down towards the lower right if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, you'll do the opposite. Then gently lift to see how you've done. You want it to be dark enough that you can see, but not too dark so that it will show through your painting. For future tracings, use a different color pencil or pen so you can see where you traced. To help avoid unwanted smudges, place a sheet of scrap paper between the graphite paper and your watercolor paper, and then move it to reveal small sections to trace at a time. Many artists advise stretching your watercolor paper to prevent warping. If you don't paint with a lot of water, it may not be necessary for you. This varies among artists and is just a matter of personal style. To stretch your watercolor paper, start by wetting it until all of it is soaked, and then let the excess water drip off. Since I don't have a sink nearby, I'm using a large pan of water. While your watercolor paper is damp, gently pull from opposite directions to stretch it, and you'll feel the paper give just a little bit when you stretch. Don't pull too tight. You don't want to tear it, just enough to feel it stretch a little. And then be sure to do it from the opposite side too. Mount your canvas or still wet watercolor paper on a flat surface. You can purchase a drawing board at an art store, but I'm using a piece of plywood from a hardware store that I sprayed with sealer so that it wouldn't warp. Use masking tape or painter's tape to hold your paper securely to the board. If you're stretching your watercolor paper, tape one side, stretch, and tape the opposing side. The paper may need to be re-stretched and retaped as it dries to keep it flat. Once it's completely dry, it's ready to be painted on. Some of the kits you receive will be watercolor and some will be acrylic. Let's talk a bit about the difference between watercolor and acrylic. Watercolor paints can be reactivated if they dry on the palette by adding water to them. So once you're happy with a section of your watercolor painting, don't get it wet again. Acrylic paints, on the other hand, can't be reactivated once dry. So while the acrylic paint is on your palette, give it an occasional light misting of water to keep the paints moist. If you want to save the paint for a few hours or maybe even a couple days, mist with water and slip the entire palette in a resealable plastic bag. Try to squeeze out as much of the air in the bag as possible. Your kits give color mixing instructions. Mixing colors seems to concern some people, especially new painters. I want to try to give you some confidence to not stress about this. Color mixing can actually be fun. Remember, every painting is unique. Your painting may not end up looking exactly like ours. That's okay. Mix the colors until you're happy with the look. Don't worry if your pink is a little more orangey than ours. If you like it, it'll be fine. So that covers the very basics of working with your creative painter kits. Be sure to read the Painting Basics Guide thoroughly before you get started on your first painting, Poppies and Daisies. There are many wonderful kits lined up in this program. We hope you will stay with us for many months and enjoy the variety of landscapes, florals, animals, and much more that are coming your way.